Tonight on Chronicle, inventor, artist, legislator. Nashua's Ken Gidge on his latest creation, a new art form.
This area right here, okay, touch it if you wanted to. One day, I got freaked out because I'm working, and this can't be. And I had some 3D glasses, and I put it on, and it's not supposed to happen.
That's next on Chronicle.
First up tonight, we'd like you to meet a Granite State original. Ken Gidge is a Renaissance man of sorts, an artist, an inventor, a politician, and a Nashua TV personality.
Yeah, Audrey Cox spent some time with Ken and got a look at his latest invention, a new art form he calls Gidge 3D Spectral Illusions.
In the 1940s and 50s, Jackson Pollock was considered one of the greatest living painters in the modern art world. By dripping, tossing, and spilling paint onto the blank canvas, the tormented and talented artist created a groundbreaking technique that continues to inspire and mystify his fans today, decades after his death. Among them, painter and inventor Ken Gidge of Nashua.
The Jackson Pollock stuff is so fascinating because he's just not throwing the paint. That's all you ever saw he does. But if you saw any of his work in the museums, you will know it's not paint that's just thrown.
So inspired by Jackson Pollock, Ken Gidge was determined to break the Pollock code, uncover Pollock's secret to his art. And in doing so, Gidge says he came up with a new art form all his own. 3D paintings, brightly colored circles and shapes. Once you put on the 3D glasses, images painted on a flat surface seem to float and jump off the canvas.
The evolution of how it worked took 4 years. And one day, I got freaked out because I'm working, and this can't be. And I had some 3D glasses, and I put it on, and it's not supposed to happen.
Like the mentor he never met, Gidge had discovered a breakthrough art form. Now he has a code that other artists can only begin to try and figure out.
Everything I do is new. I'm the guy who has the code. And I know all artists will try to use it after they know how it's done, because not only does it work with 3D, it really looks kind of interesting without the 3D. It's different colors and how they're mixed and how they're put upon a canvas.
I am yours, you are mine, you are what you are.
It's no surprise Gidge is a product of the 60s, a time he calls magical. The palette of colors he uses makes you think of that decade of peace, love, and all things psychedelic.
Everything, from the assassination of the presidents and what will end the 60s with landing on the moon. You can't get it much more interesting than that, than the music, obviously. So sure, I would say the 60s are always there.
And these psychedelic shapes seem to float on top of one another, jumping off the canvas once you view them in 3D.
This area right here, okay, touch it if you wanted to. You start looking at it for a while, it's going to come off. And then without glasses, it's going to come off. But it takes a while to figure it out. When people see this stuff, they just freak out many times. How do you get somebody to look at art that way? You can't. Either they see it or they don't see it.
But this creative and quirky self-taught artist has a very different life outside his studio at the New Hampshire State House. Gidge is a 3-term Democratic state representative. You can see he has an easy rapport with fellow lawmakers. But when he sits in the Great Hall during the legislative session, he can often be seen engaging in his artwork, doodling on a piece of paper.
I have Republicans behind me that give me a hard time, which we're friends, and Republicans here and Republicans here.
In fact, when Gidge walks through the hallways past the elaborate portraits of New Hampshire's former leaders, he jokes with Secretary of State Bill Gardner about whether some of his 3D portraits could hang in these hallowed halls someday. Back in his home studio, Gidge agrees to let us see him work. Well, Sort of. Make no mistake about it, he guards the code to his 3D art form very carefully. In fact, he's even a bit puzzled about how he brings it all together.
How did I get from there to there?
How did you?
Same way you get the symphony, Carnegie Hall, practice.
So while we can watch Gidge fill in some background on his latest painting, he won't even show us the paint he's using, by the way. He says his goal now is to predict what other artists will do once they figure out his technique, because he always wants to stay one step ahead of the people trying to unlock his code.
They're going to do these things, so I'm just trying to figure out what everybody's going to do. So, it sounds kind of awkward. In other words, I'm trying to do what other people will do when they find out what the code is.
Gidge can trace his artistic abilities back to his childhood. He says he comes from a family of inventors.
As a child, I was always watching my father, who had a photographic memory, and my uncle, who was another genius. They would always be drawing. And the drawings that they would be doing would be parts of different inventions. So I always picked up on that.
Personally, Gidge is nothing like the tragic and brilliant mentor he never met. But Gidge is hopeful his art form will live on by inspiring other artists the way he was by Jackson Pollock.
You wait till somebody figures it out. You watch the work they're going to do. There's no measuring stick. You can't measure this by a mile or an hour or a century. I don't know how to measure it. So when you can't measure something, you don't know if it's good or it's bad. I know one thing, this is certainly going to outlive me.